everyone, I'm Jade from Colour Me Forum. You might know me as Colour Me. I've noticed a lot of artists having trouble with Illustrator, things like what it's used for, how to use it, especially the pen tool, things like that. So I felt like it was my duty as someone who is an Illustrator junkie to kind of address these things, especially in the context of colouring artists, because there's not much out there in the way of tutorials specific for us. Most of them are self-taught artists. There's quite a few premium tutorials, like Adobe has some, Linda has some, and they're very good, but they don't go into some of the things that I'm going to go into today. So before you jump into Illustrator, you should look at whether or not you need Illustrator. Illustrator is a vector program. Photoshop is for raster images. It does have vector capabilities in stuff like smart objects and paths, but overall it's a raster program. So if you're doing photography or grayscale images, whether they're hand-drawn or photographs, you should be working in Photoshop. You should not be working in Illustrator. I know a lot of people are saying go into Illustrator and live trace, but live trace does not work like that. It is not intended to work like that. If you import it at 300 dpi or more, you will have it at a very good quality for printing. 300 dpi is the standard. Do not make an image at 150 dpi. Do not make it lower than that. You need 300 or more. You've got to remember that even if it looks good at Amazon, if you've checked that box that it will distribute to its little fan club of people who print books off, they're going to be printing your book too. And if you give them 150 dpi, they might not be able to handle it as good as Amazon can handle it. And Amazon handles it surprisingly well. But that should not mean that you put your work on that, because you put a lot of effort into it. It's time to show it off. Give it the DPI it deserves, and give your fans the DPI they deserve. If you're doing line work, or if you've done a drawing, you would like to bring that into Illustrator, I would recommend tracing it over the live trace function. The live trace function can be used if you clean it up in Photoshop first. I will do a tutorial on that at another date, but it's still going. Live trace is still not going to be the best option. Tracing is, and I'm hoping that this tutorial I show you today will help you get tracing under your belt, especially with the pen tool, because the pen tool, it's your best friend, and I would love to show you how to use it. So let's get started. First off, I'm going to open a new document. Alright, and we're going to get to know the interface just a little bit so you don't get lost. Up here, you've got a little drop down that says Essentials, and these are called Workspaces. Now you can change these to fit your own personality. You might like the web interface. You might like having these things all out here. You might like having the typography interface. You might like having painting. You know, they're all slightly different. They all have different they're designed for different purposes. I prefer to use Essentials because everything is compact. Now, I actually prefer to click this little double arrow here and expand out my toolbar, because that reminds me of Photoshop and it makes me a little more comfortable. If you work in Photoshop a lot, you might like to hit this. It's just a little arrow there. Now, if a window is missing, which there are a couple of windows missing, and I'll drag those in later and show you some of their functions, you can dock these in and out just by grabbing the little bar there. And it's very easy to do. You can move them around, do whatever you need to do, and you can make this workspace yourself. If you accidentally click one and drag it out, it's very simple to put it back. And if you're having trouble and you just want to reset everything, if you click here, you can click Reset Essentials, or whichever your workspace is. You can also save your own and manage them here, and it'll just add it up here for you. So do whatever makes you comfortable. You'll know what makes you comfortable after time. Just feel free to move that around. Now when you start with your document, I'm actually just going to do some scribbles here so I can show you a couple of things. Alright, so I've got this selection tool here. This is just your regular selection tool, and I've just zoomed in so we can see. Now, this selection tool will select one single object based on the line or anchor point that you select. You can see this one only lights up when I hover over it just to show me what I'd be selecting, whereas this one I've selected now. Now this will let me move the entire object. This will not let me edit points. I will not be able to change line curves or anything to do with the lines. I can only move the object. Now this is really good because if I don't want to move this one, but I want to move this one, and I'm in a tight spot like just right here, I can select both of them like this, or I can just select one like that. And if I decide later that I need to select this one, if I hold shift down, I can just select it. Now what this tool will also do is let you resize. So you can resize freehand just by clicking the arrow and dragging it, and if you press shift, it will stay proportional to where it was. Just like that. The other selection tool that you really need under your belt, and you'll use this one a lot, is the direct selection tool up here. That's the white arrow. This one won't let you move the lines and object around, but it will let you move the anchor points and the handles. Now, the thing about Illustrator, the reason it's a vector program is because it works with math. Now, Photoshop will work with pixels. Pixels are squares, and Photoshop makes its lines out of pixels, and that's why you can't change them. Illustrator makes its lines out of math. All of this is math, and thank God we don't have to do it, eh? So if you want to move these points, you can just select them, make sure that it's not white and it's a little, solid color, whichever color your layer is, and you'll see that later too. And then you can just drag them. So you click once to get it, then you can drag. With the handles, you can move them this way too. Now once you know what you're doing as well with this, if you just select the line, nowhere in particular, just there, you don't have any anchor point selected, you can select the path and drag it. This might allow you to be a little more precise without having to move the handles by yourself, and that's going to be really good. Now when you get to the pen tool, you're going to be drawing these points instead of having the brush tool draw them, and you might think, this is great because I can just do what I want. But it's really not, because look how many points you have here. This makes the line not as smooth as it should be, and it makes your file a little bigger too. I can do that same thing with the pen tool and it'll look so much nicer. So let's get the pen tool out. Now I find it very, very helpful to hold down on this little arrow here, you can barely see that, sorry, and just come out here and click this. This will detach the panel, but it still leaves it there, so that you can move it around to wherever you're working. I like to keep mine right here so that I can see everything. So with the pen tool, if you tap it very quickly, you'll put an anchor point down, and with this line you'll get to see where your next one goes. So you can put down a couple of points. I'm just going to make a triangle. When it gets to that circle point there, see the circle underneath the cursor? That means it's closing. If you're a little bit away, it's just going to be a point. But if it's there, then it's saying it's closing it and making it into an object. Now you can check that too. See how it's moving just as one point? That's how you know it's closed. If I didn't close that, then one side would move and the others would not. And these are closed too. So now these are corner points. These don't have handles. You might have noticed that. And now I can show you how to do handles. If you click down and you hold and drag, you will make handles from the anchor point. And if you hold shift down, it will make sure they are straight. You can also have them at, I think it's 35 or 45, it's 45 degree angles, like this. See how to go around? So let's just say I'll go this way. I just have a little one, make a bit of a rounded triangle. I'll drag again and I'll hold shift down so that it's straight. Then I'll come down here and see this green line here, it's lining me up very nicely with where my last point was. So I can click and drag. I'm going to drag this way, and then when I go up here I'll let go of shift, and if I just click this once, it will not have an anchor point for this direction, and if I click and hold, it'll make a new anchor point, but it kind of interferes with the old one, so you've got to be a little careful. Now if you want to change these, you click this one up here. This one will make corners and things again. If I click on that, it turns it into a corner, and if I drag it out, it'll make equal length handles. Now if I want to make a handle that is not of equal length, say I would like this one to be taller, so it's shorter, so it's less round, I'll click on the direct selection tool, I'll click on the handle, and I'll drag it down. Now if you want this handle to be independent of this handle, because right now when I move this handle the other one also moves, you should press the Alt key and press the handle and it will break it away. See how now I'm moving this handle, the other handle doesn't move? And that will let you have more control over the direction of your lines. Now with this one here, if you wanted to make these corners into curves, just select and drag with that tool right here, this little one. And it's just quick and simple. Now let's say you don't really want a triangle, you actually wanted a square. Well, if you click this one, you can add an anchor point. And let's just say we'll add it to there. Get our direct selection tool out, click on it, drag it around, we can make ourselves a square. It's a rather weird square, but it's a square. Now, you might want to give that a fill, say you want a red square. These icons over here show the fill and the stroke colors. If you want a color, you can double click it and find it in here. And if you want to change your stroke color, you can double click that and change it in here too. Additionally, if you click the direct selection tool, you can change the stroke size. You can make it quite big and you can make it quite small. You can also change the type of brush you're using. These are just the default brushes. I'm just giving you a quick look. This one is kind of calligraphy type style, same with this one. And as you can see, they change things. You can also change it to basic. They've got one that looks a bit like pen. You might have fun with that. They've got some interesting styles here with arrows. I think that's quite cute. They've got this little brush here, and they've got a denim border. I'll show you how to make those in another tutorial as well, and that's going to help you so much. For now, I'm just going to keep the basic line. Another thing you can do with your lines is change the width. So this is a width profile, and see how that changes the line. I'll make it a bit thicker so you can see, and maybe I'll change that from purple to pink. It's a bit brighter. Now if I change that, it changes it slightly based on where the point started. This was your first point. So from that first point it's going to get thinner and then get thicker at the furthest point from it, or you know, the longest distance from it, and then it'll get thinner again back around before it joins up. Now there's all sorts of these ones here that are pre-made, and they can really change the profile of your work and how you're working with it. So I would really take advantage of these. If you just want to make your own profile, you can use this tool here. This is called the width tool, and it looks kind of like a little jester hat. And if you just click on the path and hold down and drag, you'll see it expanding, and it tells you where it expands so that you can easily work with it. You can also drag in, so this is out and this is in. You can make it quite thin, and it will be independent of anchor points, so you need to keep that in mind, that the anchor points form a point for width as well. So you will need to adjust for anchor points as well as sometimes make your own little points. And you can make all sorts of designs with that. That will save you a lot of time too. Now if you wanted to delete this fill, or you know, just have it transparent, you will need to go over here and select this icon, the none icon. Now make sure that if you want the fill transparent, you've clicked on that first, and then you can just set it like that. If you just want to go back to black and white, all normal, you just click this little button here. Now this is transparent, but as you can see, this one's showing through it. Now if you don't want this line there because this has a fill, you want to block it out, you should press the control button and one of the square brackets on your keyboard. That's near the P key and on the row above the enter key. Now if I click the one to the right, the right square bracket, it'll move it forward, and the left one will move it back. And see how that fill will block out that line? You may need to use that in your work. You may you may find that very, very handy to have. Now let's say you were drawing a really bizarre looking cat with no ears, tails, or legs, or eyes, or anything like that. It's just a head and a body, and you don't want it to be two objects. You kind of just want to have a shape. You just want a silhouette of this cat. This really bad cat. What you want to use is called Pathfinder. You'll click on Window, and you click Pathfinder. Now Pathfinder is a beautiful tool, and it has all these sorts of shape modes and pathfinders. Now you can use this tool to really help you with your work. This one here will unite two paths. Now it's become one object. You notice how that path went away? If I undo that, this was two shapes. This one and this one, which doesn't want to select. If you click this, you'll unite them. If you click this one, you'll minus the top one, which is the front. And now it's just one shape there. Now it looks like a shoe. So let's get started with the pen tool, and I've got a couple of activities that I would like to start with to help everybody learn how this tool works and how you can really use it to your advantage. So I'm going to place an image into this so that we can work with it. So to start our amazing and fun journey with the pen tool, I wanted to show you very quickly what people do with their images. What they'll do is they'll click on this image trace, or they'll click on this drop down to get presets. I'm going to select the black and white logo because we know this is a black and white logo, but many people are trying to do this for photos and it just doesn't work. Now you'll see why this doesn't actually work for logos as well in a minute when I click on the expand button. You can see all these extra anchor points. These make it very, very difficult to edit this image without it distorting quite a bit. You don't need all of those points, and I'll show you what happens when I trace this image over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer and lock that old one. So now we can't accidentally modify that, and I'm going to work with blue because I can see it better against black. We need to remember about Illustrator and just math in general, because this is working with math, is that the shortest distance between 2 points is, the distance between them. If we're adding all these extra points in, we're adding all this extra distance that we need to cover. So I'm going to turn off, no, I won't turn off Smart Guides actually, because it's going to make it harder. Now this is my W, and I've tried to make it nice and big so everyone can see it. It's probably better like this. Unfortunately it's going to line up to that, but we'll just go with that. If I click here, I'm going to hold shift down so I make a straight line. Click there. Can't do shift on this one. I'm going to say that's roughly the right place. Hold shift down again to make this straight line. Tap. Come up here, and then I'll close it. That looks about right. So now I've got this done. So well, these are all the same. So let's just select this with the direct select tool, and we'll press Alt and drag it over. There we go. Alt again, drag it over. Now that's lined it up nicely. If we're worried that these three aren't the right level, what we can do is select all three of them, and up here the align tools pop up. Now I want you to select this drop down here, make sure align to selection is selected, and then you can click align bottom. And if any are out of order, let's just move this one completely out of order. I'll just move it up. If any are out of order like that, you've just accidentally knocked it, you can click Align Bottom and it goes straight back into line. Very, very handy tool. Now we'll do this other side with the pen tool. Where'd my pen tool go? There it is. Again, line up with the one we're working with. Hold Shift down. Oops, I did in the wrong spot. I can just press Control Z and that'll take it back. Don't forget to hold Shift. We go down here. Whoops, I didn't mean to press that. Now I've got my little green line lining me up to my other 3 blue ones. I'll click there. I don't need a Shift tool yet. And then I'll close it there. I'll do this one. Whoops, I didn't line it up. Sometimes that happens. There we go. Hold Shift. As you get used to Illustrator, like I'm doing it very slowly now so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Holding Shift right now. As you get better with Illustrator, you'll be able to do this much better and much quicker. So now we've got our 3 things. I'm just going to align bottom. They're all in line. That's really good. And now we can swap it out and make it all blue. Now if this does have rounded edges there, then this will be better than this one. But if we look at this one, and let's ungroup this because it's still a live trace. Select the background and delete it. Now we're just left with these. If we look at these, if we had to try and edit these ourselves, we would be minusing anchor points, and you can see how it's distorting the image. This means that we're going to have to do a lot more cleanup, and in the end this whole thing is going to end up more painful, and we're going to have to convert all these anchor points into corner points. Oops, there's an extra one there. See how I missed it? Now even if it does have curves there, you should never have more anchor points than you absolutely need. And we're going to have to sit here just for this one now. We're going to have to align them to bottom to get those 2 anchor points. If you use the direct select tool here, the white one, you can select just those 2 anchor points and align only them, and that's going to help you a lot too. But see how I've had to do so much work just on that one, and now I don't know really if these are the same distance even. So I don't think it is. I think this one needs to come out a little bit. That looks a bit better, but that's just a lot of wasted time. And if I wanted it to have rounded corners, I could just use this anchor tool here. Hold Shift down and move it out a little. And use my little Alt key to make it a little more rounded. Or whatever I needed to do. I don't need to spend all that time fiddling around to get a smooth line like I have here. So here I have the Nike logo, and I'm going to trace this, because if I were to just use the brush tool like this and draw around it, this is my best effort trace. I'm trying this very, very hard. That doesn't look too bad. Illustrator smooths out the lines, but if you look at all these points, it's going to be so difficult to modify. I'm going to have to edit. I'm going to have to remove, say, this point here and this point just to straighten out this line that I messed up. And that does make it a bit more, doable, but at the same time this line is massively straight and these lines are kind of wonky. So it's just, you end up looking a little bit out of place. So let's trace it. If you've got line work, tracing is the best thing you can do, and it's super easy. Now I'm going to put a point right here, because otherwise it'll be a bit too long to go all the way up here, and I'll fix that other point up in a minute. Go down like that. I just did a corner point, a tap there, come down here. I'm going to drag a little bit just to get me around this corner. I think I want one here. I'm going to drag this one out to make that curve. See how accurate that is? And then I'm going to connect right there. Now if I zoom in a little bit, I can fix this one up. Sometimes you mess it up, sometimes you don't. It's really trial and error, and it's getting to know the program and your own personal limits and expectations too, and where you're comfortable being. when it comes to accuracy. So there's your Nike logo. Looks just as good as the other one. And just for a heads up, I'm going to switch that around. There you go. Looks exactly the same. And I think that bottom bit is a little bit too, whoopsies, sharp for me. So what I'm going to do is just curve it out a little more. That might work a bit. Nope, it didn't. There we go. Just, a little bit of effort goes a long way, and the quality of your original image too is going to affect this, especially if you are tracing to be accurate and you're not correcting mistakes. But this icon would have been done in Illustrator to begin with. That's how you would do this one. Now we'll do another one. Now this logo is a little bit harder, but it's actually very easy, and the reason we're going to do this one is because you can actually do a circle in 2 points. You don't need it to be 4 points. You don't need it to be 18 points. You only need 2 points to do a circle. So I'm going to try and do this with as few points as possible. Now this one I'm just going to click and drag because we need a bit of a curve. So click and drag. I'm going to go around to this bit here. That's about the middle. Good old smart guide. And I'm going to drag up. I'm going to press shift because this is quite a geometric shape. Oops, I gotta swap those around. And then I'm going to come over to here. I'm going to press shift down as well. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to go this way. So I've dragged that out to where I think is acceptable. And now see how I can't get down to there? I can't make that straight. If I press Alt, I can change that handle. Don't forget about that. And then I can just click there. Oops. I can do my clicking and my dragging. So I can drag it out just a little bit there, press Alt as I'm going, and put it down that way. So I don't need to wait until after I've placed that point, sorry. I can go up here. Actually, I'll make that level with my last point. There we go. I'm going to hold down shift because this is geometric. And then I'm going to come over here, place this down. I'm going to press Alt so I can move my point towards my next anchor. And then I'm just going to press there to close it. Now with my direct selection tool, I can change this up a little bit. You might not get it first time. You might have to do a little bit of editing, and I'm trying to do this quite slowly so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm just dragging these anchor points, and don't forget to hold shift. This one needs a little bit of dragging, and this one needs a little bit of dragging because it's coming down a bit too far there. Now that looks a lot better than what you get with Live Trace. This one needs to come up just a teensy weensy bit, and this one down a little bit. Down a little bit more. Nope, that was a little too far. So it's up to you how accurate you want to make it. As you can see, that is a nice shape. And if you wanted to, you could simply press Alt, drag it away. Now you right click this shape, click Transform, or hover over it, and you can reflect it. Click OK, and it reflects, and you can put it down. And that's how you can make sure your object is exactly mirrored. If you want to make this one object and not two C's, especially so it won't move around, if you're just worried about it moving, I would click Group. However, if you just don't want it to, you just want it to be one solid image, you can go and find your Pathfinder window. That's in Window, Pathfinder. If you click this one here, it will unite the shape. That means every bit of overlapping will become part of just the one shape. So if I click this, it'll show you. You've got to make sure both shapes are selected, and as you can see, there's no lines going between them now. They are just one shape. So that's very, very handy to know. And again, your accuracy is going to be based on practice and just the amount of time you want to put into it. So let's do another logo. I think everyone will know this logo, and it looks really complicated, but I'm going to show you it's really not. And what we're going to do is start up here, and I'm going to go down to here. This one's a bit different to the other logos. Actually, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see the panda a bit better. I'm going to drag this time just to get a bit more of a curve, and then better swap that around. Come down here and drag. Just try and line it up as best you can. Remember, you can go over it, and I'm going to press Alt so I can come up here. I'll make this a bit shorter. Now, this little thing here, I don't need to put a point here so I can go down here. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll feel with this. Oops. So, I've got my anchor point going up here. I'm going to press Alt again so I can modify that. I could put another point. I'm going to put one here. And by using my anchor point smartly, I can get out of needing another one there. I'll go into it and show you a bit better by zooming in. If I move this one up, it's going to make it a little bit sharper between them. I'm going to move that down a little. Oops. And if I move this one down, it's going to just make it way more sharper. Now it's a little too low. There we go. See how accurate that is? And then this one, I'm going to move up just a little bit more, make it a little more accurate there. This one I'll need to go down just a little bit because I knocked it. Now, to go back into this, I just click the pen tool, make sure the path is selected, and I click that anchor. See the little icon how it changes from an asterisk to a slash? That slash means it's going to connect up with that line. If I get out of that again, if I hold it down, I can make a new path. It will alter the old one because the old one's still there. If I press Alt now, I can move it around like this. I'm going to put one here. Another point. Whoops. Sometimes it can be difficult. And another point down here. I'm going to press Alt this time. I'm just going to slightly move it over here. Do that, and I'll have to come back and edit it. I'm going to do that, just edit it away a little bit. I don't like leaving it too much. I'm just dragging. I'm not doing anything special, trying to keep it near where it was. Anchor points can be a little frustrating sometimes, but keep working with them. You will get better as time goes on. It's all about practice, and after you've traced a couple of things, you'll wonder why you didn't trace more. I'm going to see if pressing Alt will just do that. There you go. If you press Alt and drag, it will get that anchor point ready for you. Now let's see how big this slope is. I think I could probably get down to here. I'm going to drag back this way. Whoops. Alright. I need to zoom out a little. I messed that up a little bit. But alright, use this tool that wants to do it one by one. There we go. And then I'll just modify this one a little bit. Perfect. And now what we'll do is I'll use my old tool over here. Kind of drag it down there. Get my pen tool ready. I messed it up. Alright, I'll have to drag my pen tool just to let it know I still need that anchor point there. And I'm good to go. And I want to press Alt down to get this down there. I can probably go up here. Yep, not a problem there. And let's go up to here. Now this panda probably does have white marks in him, but I'm going to treat it like he doesn't and he's transparent, because companies will often have two versions of their logo. One will be for black and white printing, for like office documents and things like that, especially official documents. Most of them do colour now, but back in the day they did do black and white, so they will usually still have two versions. And this one, because they still use black and white in a lot of cases, this one here I'm going to assume is black and white, which means they're expecting white to be behind it, and it will only have these black marks here. It won't actually have a white bit there. Now if it did have a white bit there, we would also need to trace that and add that in, or even just trace it accurately here and just squiggly behind there, just to kind of put it behind that big black mark we're making. But for now, we will assume that it is transparent and not white. And I could probably get away with going down to here, but I'm just going to go here to be safe. Make sure it's accurate. I'm just dragging. Oops, trying to find my line. That looks pretty good to me. And I've got to, oops, forgot to press Alt. Pressing Alt will help me move my handle. And then I can just come around to here. Keep going. I'm going to have to change that one. Not too much. You can just press Alt and change it. And then go down this side. And it can be quite time consuming to trace things, but it's well and truly worth it. If I did this with the brush tool, and I did a lot of these sort of tracings, my Illustrator would end up getting quite weighed down and wouldn't work quite as well. It'd be a bit of a nightmare. So you want to take care of it a little bit, and it'll take care of you too. I can move my points around as I need to. Don't forget, I'm using the direct selection tool right now. I think I'm going to need another anchor point in there for accuracy, so let's see. I'll move him down to here. As I said before, it's all trial and error. You will just have to learn your way around it and get used to using it. As you can see, sometimes it's not as easy as it looks, but you know, on the scale of things, it's quite easy to use Illustrator. Like, I'm not having a significant amount of trouble pressing a pen and pressing Alt. So this bit is a little more detailed, so I'm actually gonna make my anchor point go around. Actually, I'm going to move that. Yeah, I'm going to move that. I want that to go up a little bit more. There we go. And now, what am I going to do here? Guess I'll start like this. Hold on. It's going to be more accurate if I go down here. And just there. Now, when you're good at tracing and if you have good eyesight, you should really try to use a thinner stroke. Like right now, I think I'm just using the default 1 point stroke. But you should try to use it as thin as possible so you can still see the original line work behind it. And that will really, really, really improve your accuracy, and it's going to help you a lot. Like if I show you, it's probably not going to look quite as accurate as we think. See, when I put it down to 25 points, you start to notice it's not quite as accurate as it could be in some places. Like right here, oops, this little guy, he should probably be up a little. Did the wrong thing. There we go. And his little stroke needs to come down quite a bit. And then this one needs to go out quite a bit. So that will help with your accuracy, but just for the purpose of this tutorial and the following ones, we're just going to stick with our 1 point and pretend it's nice and accurate. So don't forget, the finer your line, the more accurate you will get, just because you'll be able to see where you're going and what you're doing. But there's nothing wrong with what we've done now. If I was going to be paid for this logo, then it would be really, I wouldn't submit what I've done, because it's not accurate at all, and hopefully I wouldn't be given an image that was raster like this and importing it in. But you get clients who do that, so it's not. Whoa. I do hate it when that happens. You can press Alt to kind of stop that. If I press Alt now, I'm just, as you can tell, doing that one anchor. I'll just edit that. Oops. And you need to come up. So now I've got one ear and a body, and I can do these eyes and this other ear fairly quickly. I'm just going to add some extra points because I'm just doing it for quickness at the moment. So don't feel too bad if one day you just can't be bothered. Just work with the energy you have and the skills you have, and try not to be too fussed. It's best if you have as few anchor points as possible to keep your work smooth and, you know, editable. But if you just don't have the energy, it doesn't turn out too terrible. And just for time's sake, I'm going to copy and paste this one. I'll show you another way to do that as well. Oops. Just put one there. I did it again. Press Alt. There you go. And I'll just move this guy down a little bit because he looks a little weird. Alright, now I want to copy and paste this one. So what I'm going to do is select it with the selection tool, right click it on transform, I'm going to reflect it, and I'm going to click preview just to see what it looks like reflected. There you go. Yep, that's what I wanted. I'm going to click copy, and it will make me a brand new copy. I can just move around. I can use my keyboard or my mouse, whichever, and then I can rotate it too, like this. So, I know this isn't entirely accurate, but just for time's sake, we're going to go with it. And I'll do his little nose. And then I'll show you how to do his mouth, because remember, we're assuming that he is transparent, which means how are we going to cut his mouth out? I'm just really going to add points in here. Don't hate me for this. There we go. So now I've got this mouth here, and we're going to need to get rid of him, because as you can see here, when we go over him, he's going to still be there. When we can't really make him white, because if we print him on, let's say orange paper, it's going to show a big white spot there. It's not going to print, quite properly, or it wouldn't if it was offset. If it's just a desk printer, it might. So what do we do? Well, first I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to make it a fill. And you can see his mouth is right there, so we're going to select these two right here, and using Pathfinder again, we can minus the front, and now he's cut out. Isn't that a nice simple way to do the line work? And you can change these little things so quick and easy. You can join him up, group him, and move him around without worrying about leaving an eye behind, and he's just gorgeous. Thanks for doing this tutorial with me. I hope the pen tool is now your friend, and I hope that you start looking up black and white logos to trace, or pictures, but I would start with logos. It's much easier, and once you get to a point where you're comfortable with it, you'll find it's actually quicker to use the pen tool than anything else. If you could check me out at colormeforum.com, maybe post some of your pages in our member showcase, our little gallery. Follow us on Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and of course here as well. And if you have any requests for tutorials, any comments about this one, post them below and I'll get back to you. Happy coloring!